Welcome back into TF. DATCP is here with another great tip. If I could have came up with a cool tip, Michael, to say, it's DATCP on our TF talking CHECK scams. That's check scams. It would have been really cool, but it didn't work out that way. Michael, you put up with my shenanigans each and every month, and I appreciate it. Today we're talking about online car sales targeted by fake check scams. This is interesting because I think a lot more people have gotten more comfortable doing things online, but selling a car online is interesting because there's a lot of things that come with that, I think. Just in general, you want people to be comfortable buying things online and doing that work online, but you got to be aware of what the possibilities are that you're opening yourself up to, right?
You do. You bring up a good point that a lot of things are being done online, especially selling cars. This online marketplace has been around for a long time, both by dealers selling cars, but then also like you and I, the Facebook marketplace. Craigslist has been around for a while selling cars. And so in doing that, sellers just have to make sure they're really aware of some of those red flags and concerns that they might have when they're trying to sell it. One of them might be you have somebody who reaches out right away and they're really interested, expresses that interest, but they say, I can't come look at it, I'm not local, but don't worry, I'll pay you full price. And, a lot of days, who wants to really pay full price for any car to start with, much less sight unseen? Or they'll come up with some excuses as to why they can't meet with you to see it, but they'll say, I'll just send you the payment. And then that kind of starts where the check scam is coming into play, as they say, all right, well, I'll send you that payment, or maybe I'll send you a little bit extra because I know you might have some other interest, and things kind of go downhill from there.
Yeah, so the person might receive that check in the mail, and then they'll come back to you and be like, well, I gave you too much. Can you send something back to me?
Correct.
Oh, boy.
So it's kind of a spin on the classic overcheck, overpayment scam, where we've seen this in other industries, and now we're starting to see it with online car sales. And it's exactly like you said. They mistakenly added an extra zero, or that one was supposed to be a 2, and next thing you know, they're saying some excuse where I didn't have enough money or it's not going to cover. And what they'll do is they'll try and offer you some type of incentive to send that money back. Hey, I overpaid, but go ahead and keep $100 for the inconvenience, or use that as a down payment. But in any method, they want you to turn around and send that money back right away. And they'll create that urgency to get it back right away.
How do you try to verify somebody is legit, when it comes to this online piece? Because I'm suspecting that these communications too, are coming in, kind of interesting as well, through a chat, if you're using that online platform, depending on what you're using, and the way that chat's going on, I don't know, how do you verify?
Well, it's tough. You have to start looking for the red flags that we're talking about, knowing what you're supposed to be looking for. And then also, we talk other times where you're making online sometimes with vacation homes, and we say never get off that platform. Well, with these online platforms, it is kind of common to stay on them, and they don't typically try to get you to go someplace else. With Craigslist, they will, because they don't have that communication medium, so you have to go somewhere else. But you also want to say, well, why are you paying me through check? We were talking earlier before we started, is paying through check is, not very common anymore, and there's so many different alternatives. And so understanding what those alternatives are and saying, I'm not really comfortable, especially with a personal check. If you have maybe a bank check or a money order, adds a little bit more security. Yeah. But also knowing what you can do when you do get that check, if they say it's the only method that you can. And that is making sure that you're pausing and waiting. You're looking at if they're asking you to send any money back, that is an absolute, not a red flag, that's a stop sign. You never want to send anything back on an overpayment. The second is, if you really think it is legitimate, is making sure that you're taking time and allowing that check to clear. Because how the scam works is they send you that money, you deposit that check, and then they get you to send them some back right away. Before that time, it takes 7 to 10 days for that bank to clear it. Well, by the time that clears and they realize this is a fake check, they're going to take that money back out of your account. And now you've already paid some of that out, and now you're at that loss.
I was just going to say, is there a catch here that the check was even real to begin with that you got?
Probably not. I would say, especially in the check scams, they're not real at all. But boy, they're convincing. They look just like it. And so you and I, who may not be check experts, it looks real.
Well, I was just saying, if you don't use checks very often, it could be like, oh, wait. That's a thing still?
Yeah, it is. And they, and it's not just checks. They'll have fake money orders, fake cashier's checks. We've seen them fabricate everything.
So you kind of already mentioned this, but I think it's worth saying again, is that, if somebody's asking to overpay, that's got to maybe be that red flag. Man, Michael, I just really want this vehicle so bad, so if I'm just going to pay over the amount, or, maybe it just sounds wrong.
Yeah.
It's maybe sound like, oh, all right, I got a little bidding more going on here, but
Well,
not.
you raise a good point there is overpaying, and if they really want to overpay, that's one thing. Sometimes you see a car that's in demand, or we saw it the last couple of years where, we say people were paying over asking price all the time. The difference there is when they overpaid and then they ask you for money back. And they say, oh, this was my mistake, and for whatever reason, need to get that money back. That's where you need to stop.
Yeah, well, I'd be like, too late, but that's just me. I'm just a jerk, but that's nevertheless. Consider using escrow or online payment service when selling a car online. I could think this, not only is this a great idea for protection, but also receipt-wise. I was thinking, like, where's the receipt in here? I'm always that guy that, what's the receipt? What's the proof of purchase? What can you document here to
Good
be
points.
safe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're very similar to thinking about buying a house, just on a smaller scale. But the services are all the same. The service isn't limited to just the house. They do it because those purchase prices are so high. But the escrow service is still there if you want to use it. And if you're selling a high dollar vehicle, I mean, some of those high dollar vehicles are the same price as, a smaller house. Well, back in the day they are, but nonetheless, you still want to.
You dated yourself there, buddy.
I did. Have that opportunity to have that medium to help make sure that money doesn't get into somebody else's hands until it's the right time.
It's very true. As far as folks who may have fallen victim to this scam, because it does vary. It could be a car. It could be a lot of different items, so to speak. If somebody feels like, oh man, this is happening right now, or it's happened to me, what would be the first step that you would suggest that you do?
If you fell victim and you lost money, first is call law enforcement and file a police report and let them know, because it is theft, and it's fraud, and it's those. So give them a chance to see where you are in that payment, and maybe there's an opportunity to freeze that. Second is that if you catch it right away, if there's an opportunity to freeze whatever payment you made, whether it be through your bank or if you maybe sent a other type of check, if there's a way to track it back. That's why they like checks, is because you can't pull them back, and it's hard to stop that payment sometimes. And so making sure that you do that. And then third is, if you haven't quite gotten to that point, call us at DATCP. Let us know what's going on. We may not be able to track down the money, but we'll certainly have resources and steps for you to take to help you stop and minimize the victimness.
Does this surprise you at all that it's come back? Like, because popular and, years ago, popular, certainly, but is it surprise you, or is it sort of like, well, people don't, because it's the lack of maybe using checks, that it comes back, or?
So it's a great question, and I think it doesn't surprise me, and the reason it doesn't is because of what we talked about earlier, is we think that this is so old and it's been around for so long that everybody knows about it, but they don't. Yeah. Or they think no one would ever do this anymore.
That's kind of what I was like when I first read it. I was like, this still happens?
Right.
But
it'd be like, well, everybody knows that this is a scam, but do they? Or will they actually stop and react to it? We've talked other times about, with phishing and tech support scams, we've known about them for so long, but they continue to be the number one way that these scammers get into the system. And it's because we've come so complacent, like, it can't be real, because scammers don't do this anymore because they know about it, when in reality it isn't. But the difference is we're seeing the spin where we're seeing old takes just applied to new scenarios.
Yeah.
So, fake overcheck on different things. Now it just happens to be buying a car.
Don't let your guard down. Don't let your guard down. And grab a stop sign and look at it. Say, stop. No, this is great information. One more time, Michael, if people want to learn more about this, report it, or just find some great resources through your guys' website, how can they do so?
You can visit us at datcp.wi.gov or give our hotline a call at 1-800-422-7128.
Always a pleasure seeing you, my friend. Appreciate the information, and go checks. Be careful using those checks, right? You got to be careful. Appreciate it, as always.
Thanks, Jeremy.